All right, guys, welcome back. I hope you guys all enjoyed the first round of the playoffs. I know that was, for me, one of the most exciting first rounds that I can remember. Five game sevens, two game sixes, all the series pretty close. I know there were lots of blowouts within each game, a lot of the games. I found that towards the end of each series, the games kind of tightened up, which was good, more exciting hockey. But yeah, I just thought I'd quickly recap the first round predictions and then quickly just move on into the second round predictions. So this is just the same kind of visuals I had in the first video if you guys haven't seen that. But I'll just quickly go through my predictions. So starting off, guys, this series was just a complete blowout. I don't think anyone really expected anything else. I did give Nashville the benefit of the doubt and gave them one game of the series. That didn't even happen. I thought it could have happened in game four, but Colorado came back later in that game, so that was a sweep. I think most people predicted a sweep of 5 games. Not much else to be said. We kind of all predicted that. All right, guys, this one I had right on the money. I did Blues in 6 games. Obviously, I gave Minnesota a couple games because they are a really good team, despite the fact that the Blues have really had their number over the past few seasons. But ultimately, the Blues looked like the deeper team. Even though Minnesota on paper has, in my opinion, just as good depth, they definitely got outplayed in the series, especially when Binnington came in. The goaltending definitely made the difference there. Special teams was also huge. I don't have any of the playoff numbers, but I think the Blues were something like 30% on the power play and 85 on the penalty kill or something like that, 83. So yeah, special teams made a huge difference in this series. So yeah, the Blues taking 6. Next up, guys, we have the Flames versus Stars. This is definitely a series that it was kind of boring the first couple games, and then really actually got very exciting. I think Game 3 and onward. Very close games. Like all the other series were blowouts early on, and this is the only series that seemed tight for the whole series. I predicted Flames in 6. It ended up being Flames in 7, obviously. As I said in my first video, the Stars never go down easy, even when they're the underdog. They always like to push teams to the brink. I think, yeah, as I said before, the last time they were swept was 2001. And the last time they lost in 5 games was 2006. So, they'll always give teams a run for their money. But ultimately, the Flames were the better team in this series. So they win in 7. So I was 1 game off. Next up, guys, we have the Oilers and the Kings. I definitely didn't give the Kings enough credit because I said Oilers in 5. But the Kings definitely came out flying. They were competitive in all the games they won. I know that it was a little bit lopsided in some of those games that the Oilers won. Like they won 6-0, 8-2, and then even in the game 7, Quick kind of stole as much as he could. It was 2-0, but it could have definitely been like 5-0. So I think overall the Oilers were definitely the better team, but the Kings definitely have a bright future up ahead. They really impressed me with the way they played, and I mean that's also without Doughty. I know Doughty alone wouldn't suddenly make them win the series per se, but having that veteran presence there would definitely have maybe changed something. So Kings I think have a very bright future in the next few years. So nothing to worry about there if you're a Kings fan. So it's a few games off here, but yeah, the Oilers still came out on top. All right, guys, and then this is another series that I got right on the money here. I predicted Panthers in 6. I actually, as the series was going on, I was like, ooh, the Capitals might actually like upset them, especially when they were up. What was it? Yeah, like 2-1, I think, late in Game 4, and then even 3-0 in Game 5. Like I was like, man, the Capitals could definitely take it from the Panthers, but the Panthers, the best comeback team in the league, did their magic. They end up winning in 6, which is what I predicted. But it's funny because as I recall, I don't think the big players were necessarily the most prominent. I think Huberdeau, Duclair, they had, like, Huberdeau had 3 points, Duclair had 2. I don't know how many Barkov had, but Verhaeghe, man, absolute beast. He had 6 goals, 6 assists, 6 games. Just unbelievable. So clutch. I think he had 3 game winners, including 2 overtime winners. So that was just absolutely crazy. I think ultimately the better team won here. I do kind of worry about Florida, though. I think, on paper, they should have probably handled this series better. Even though they obviously won in 6, even in those wins, they didn't necessarily look overly dominant, and they kind of had to clutch the wins out, which Against Washington might be okay, but against a more experienced team like Tampa, might not work. So I think they still have a lot of work to do. But yeah, otherwise though, good series with the Panthers. All right, and this is the series I watched, probably paid the most attention to in the first round. I was like always tuning into this game, made sure, obviously sometimes you can't tune into all the games, but these games I made sure I watched. What a series that was. I predicted Lightning in six. It ended up being seven, obviously. But the Leafs really gave them a run for their money. In fact, you could argue that they were the better team most of the series. Um, yeah, like the Leafs really impressed me. It's funny because there's all this talk about the Leafs constantly losing in seven, but I think of all the game sevens they've lost or all the series they've lost in seven, this is the one where you can't really blame them as much because they played pretty well for the most part. Obviously last year they choked against Montreal. That was kind of embarrassing. Against Boston, the few times you can pinpoint, like guys like Jake Gardiner giving the puck away at inopportune times. This series, they really didn't do bad in any specific area. I think the Lightning just ended up edging them out, just because that's how it was. So unfortunate for them. In my opinion, I think where you'd fix the Leafs would be the bottom six forwards. I think that was like what I noticed. In the past, it had been the stars not showing up, whereas this year the stars all showed up, like Marner, Tavares, Matthews, but they didn't get as much depth support. So I think improving that depth would be beneficial in my opinion. But yeah, it's definitely very tricky of what they do next because they have not been able to get out of that first round for what 5 years now, 6 years, something like that. So it'll be very interesting off season for them. But yeah, guys, Lightning won. I was one game off. All right, guys. Next up, we have the Hurricanes versus the Bruins. So I predicted Hurricanes in six. It ended up being Hurricanes in seven. But after the first two games, I really thought it could have been like Hurricanes in five or even a sweep. The Bruins obviously played much better at the Garden. So they made it close, but ultimately the Hurricanes came out on top. Um, and if you guys hadn't watched my last video, I did predict the Hurricanes to win the Stanley Cup, and I'll be going into that shortly. Do I still think they'll win? I still think they're probably coming out of the East. But the fact that it went to seven is a little bit concerning. But then again, they don't have Anderson. I'm not sure if that would have made a difference, to be honest, in the games they lost. But yeah, I still have confidence that the Hurricanes will continue to do good. But for Boston, this could have been their last chance. It's funny because they're the underdog, obviously, despite the fact that they have the same amount of points that they did in the year they went to the finals. And back then, they were like considered the second best team in the league after Tampa. So it's kind of funny how much better the top teams are this year. But yeah, guys, I was pretty close on this one. Gave two to Boston and ended up being in seven. All right, guys, last up, we have another series that I got completely correct here. Although for a while it was not looking like that was going to be the case. Obviously, the Penguins were up 3-1, and just like in 2014, the Rangers came back and win in seven. Um, yeah, this series was like pretty crazy. I know. I was checking over the scores just out of curiosity, and I realized how high scoring all the games were when you see it all at once. And I did a bit of digging into it, and I realized that they actually tied with the 2020 series with Dallas and Colorado. These two series have the most combined goals in any series for the last like 30 years. The last time there was um, like if you just take a look at the stats, they're up in like the top six of all time, and the only ones ahead of them are like back in the 80s and early 90s when scoring was ridiculous. So yeah, in the modern era, one of the highest scoring series ever. So yeah, very interesting because you wouldn't think that based on how the teams played in the regular season. Rangers second best defensive team in the league. But yeah, tons of goals in this series. But yeah, guys, despite the fact that the Rangers won, I do have some worries about them because I feel like with the Penguins without Crosby in that game six, and without Jari on his game, fully healthy and here and there, I feel like the Penguins probably would have come out on top. That's not saying the Rangers didn't deserve it, because that's not their problem that the Penguins were banged up. But I think if the Rangers really were contenders, they probably would have been able to handle it a little bit better, especially in those crazy games in Pittsburgh where the score was really high. So I have some worries about them for the next rounds, but yeah, other than that, this was a fantastic series, and the Rangers won in 7. All right, guys, before I move on to my round 2 predictions, I thought I'd just quickly recap my predictions that I made back when I first predicted the playoffs and see how they'd still hold up. So this is what I predicted when I was predicting the playoffs. Obviously, I'm very happy I went 8 for 8. So all of these matchups still hold true. And I'm pretty content with what I predicted. Like I don't think I'd change much from what I predicted back when the playoffs first started, at least for round 2. But let's just take a deeper dive into these second round matchups so I can give more in-depth thoughts here. All right, guys, so I'm not going to spend too much time going through the series like I did in the first round, but I thought I'd just quickly give my thoughts. So I have the Avalanche beating the Blues in 6 games. I think the Blues, if this is any other year, this is definitely a team that could go further than the second round and maybe even all the way. Like I think this Blues team is even better than their cup-winning team. But because of the competition, I think the Avs are winning this one in 6. I just think they're on a mission this year. I think right now it's their cup to lose. They just impressed me so much with their game in the first round. So yeah, really, really not much else to say. Obviously, anything could happen. The Blues could still pull out the win. But I'm going to go Avs in 6. I think that's the pretty common pick right now, Avs in 6. All right, guys. Then we have probably one of the most anticipated series of the last three decades. There's been a few opportunities where we almost had this matchup, and it just didn't happen. We finally get it. I almost thought we weren't going to get it again when I was watching the Game 7 yesterday, but we have the Battle of Alberta. I'm so excited. I'm predicting the Flames in 7. Part of predicting them in 7 is just because I want it to go 7, because, man, that would be so exciting. I do think the Oilers, though, could definitely win. I thought that the Oilers looked more convincing in their wins in the first round. However, I do think that's just because of the matchups. I think Dallas is a team that's tough to blow out, whereas the Kings, if they're not on their game, you can definitely run up the score on them. So that I don't think the Flames kind of struggling to close out the series is an indication that they're not playing like the Flames in the season. I still think the Flames are one of the best teams in the league. So I do think they're the better team than the Oilers, but I do think this one will be close. I think they're relatively even in terms of who has the chance to win. I do think obviously the Flames are the better team, and head to head, I know they're 2-2 against each other. All I remember though is that the Flames did have that huge 9-5 win, which is crazy. But yeah, guys, anything can happen here. I'm going Flames in 7. All right, guys, and almost probably just as exciting as the Battle of Alberta, we have the Battle of Florida, rematch from last season. Last season was a bloodbath. I think in the playoffs last year, the Lightning were obviously the better team. Even though the Panthers finished higher on the standings, it was pretty clear the Lightning were better built for the playoffs. This year's a bit different. I do think the Panthers are better, obviously, than their team last year. I think the Lightning are a bit worse than their team last year. But I still have the Lightning winning in 6. When I first predicted the playoffs, I had Lightning winning in 7 in the second round. I've changed it to 6 because I do feel a little bit worried about the Panthers game right now. I still think it's probably going to be next year by the time they're fully ready to compete past round 2. I'm just worried about that. They don't like getting the lead early. They play from behind too much, in my opinion. And the Lightning are not a team that's going to give up that lead like Washington did. And I just think that the Lightning are just too defensively sound and experienced. So obviously fatigue could set in. Obviously the Panthers could be playing extra hard because they want to get revenge from last year. Anything could happen. I still think the Panthers could win this, of course. They're definitely both in the running. But I'm going Lightning in 6, guys. Originally had Lightning in 7. I put more weight on my original picks because it makes it more unlikely. So I think it's cooler if your original picks are correct. But with my revised picks, going Lightning in 6. All right, guys. Final matchup of round 2. I am sticking with the 5-game win of the Hurricanes beating the Rangers. Obviously, I predicted this at the start of the playoffs, and I'm sticking with it. Even though these teams are pretty evenly matched in terms of points, goals for, goals against, even the special teams and home road record. Literally every single stat. It's pretty much a matter of both teams are good. The Hurricanes are slightly better for the most part, and I just think that the Hurricanes will just continue to play well, especially if Anderson comes back. And I just think that the Rangers, based on how they played against Pittsburgh, I don't think I am very comfortable with them against an even better team in the Hurricanes. Obviously I could be wrong here, but also I'm a fan of both of these teams. They're both in my top 5 favorite teams, so I paid attention to the regular season games and also the bubble back in 2020. And lately, the Hurricanes have definitely had the Rangers number. So I'm just gonna go with the Hurricanes in 5. I don't I like obviously anything can happen. Rangers could pull up the win, but I just don't see it happening. Of all the series in this round, I think I'd say the Rangers are the least likely to move on. Even the Blues, I think, have a higher chance of upsetting the Avalanche than the Rangers have of upsetting the Hurricanes. Obviously, the statement could end up aging like milk, but that's just my opinion as of right now. All right, guys, and then just to close out this video here, I just have my revised bracket now as of round 2. Obviously, I don't really care too much about these predictions because I still put way more weight on my original predictions. I just thought it would be fun to kind of revise now what I think. So I originally had the Flames beating the Avalanche in the second round and in 6 games, and then the Hurricanes beating the Lightning in 5 games, and then I had the Hurricanes winning in 7 in the finals. However, I've changed it up a little bit here. I no longer think the Avalanche would go down. I honestly think it's their cup to lose. I just, especially if they get past that second round, they're kind of like the Capitals. How once they finally got over the second round, it was kind of just they just went all the way. I think that could happen with the Avalanche. And I just think that they're overall the better team than the Flames and the Lightning Hurricanes. I originally said Hurricanes in 5. I think you got to give more credit to Tampa, so I'm giving them an extra game. Like Hurricanes in 6, but obviously Lightning could definitely win again. And then finals, both teams pretty even. Avalanche and Hurricanes. Anything could happen, but I think Avalanche would take it. And then 7. I put 7 games here. Most finals don't go to 7 games, but it's just something I'd like to see, so might as well predict it. So, anyways, guys, that is my recap of the first round, as well as my predictions for the second round. Please drop your second round predictions in the comments below. I'll be sure to read them and respond. And I hope you guys are all as pumped as I am for the second round. All right, see you guys.